Look at the map nationwide now. There are 6,440 confirmed cases across the country. The daily decline in new cases continues across all of the states. In New South Wales, 16 new cases of COVID-19, up to nearly 2,900. Just 8 new cases in Victoria, 5 in Queensland and 0 in the ACT. So the trends across those various states are very encouraging, as is this, the curve. It continues on that flattening trajectory after falling quite dramatically from that 28th of March peak of 460. Let's bring in our political editor, Andrew Clennell. And Andrew, one of the things, of course, it's an issue that's close to your heart and mine with school-aged children is what happens on that front. Will they or won't they be going back in term 2? And there's been a bit made of the difference in the message here, hasn't there, by Labor particularly when it comes to the Prime Minister vis-a-vis the states?
Well, it seems, Kieran, some of them will be going back. That's your answer. So the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has fired things up overnight over the schools issue. He's posted a Facebook message thanking teachers and encouraging them to get back to school to teach children, reinforcing his view that schools should be back in the next term. For Victoria, that means he would like them back from today, Queensland next week and New South Wales in a couple of weeks' time. Well, the subject of schools and a return will be on the agenda. Will be an agenda item on the National Cabinet meeting tomorrow. As I understand it, polling shows broad support for a return to school, particularly with working parents fed up with attempting to work from home and teach. So Scott Morrison's on safe political ground with his push. But the issue is and continues to be the workplace safety issue around teachers and the teachers' unions. The plan in New South Wales, at least as I understand it, is for the return of more students in week 3 of term 2. It's in about 4 or 5 weeks' time, but not all students. How they achieve that probably relates to the messaging, which currently stands that you should avoid school unless you have to go because both parents are essential services workers. Optional temperature checks of students is also being discussed. Spoke earlier, as did Ashley Gillen, to the New South Wales Teachers Federation President Angelo Gavrielatos, and he told me that the Prime Minister's comments overnight have been unhelpful. They've increased anxiety levels and will continue to working constructively with the Premier to achieve an orderly return when those restrictions in terms of movement and gatherings are eased. Every indication is that won't be until mid-May or thereabouts. So the message there is kind of a hint that other restrictions could be lifted in mid-May, and that could help with the decision on schools. The suggestion, so let's listen to the Prime Minister's Facebook message he posted this morning on this.
Many students will continue distance learning. It's a choice that they may have, some more than others. But we know for some families and students this won't be possible. And their education, what they learn, is at great risk of suffering. It is even more essential for those vulnerable students who we know won't get an education at home. It's a sad reality that we know it's true and we need to face it. These children need you for our schools to remain open.
Now, of course, this sensitive issue inevitably leads to questions of politicians on what's happening with their children, particularly when they're so adamant that schools should be back. Well, Education Minister Dan Tehan was quizzed on this morning at a press conference and on this channel by Annalise Nielsen as to whether his children are going back to school tomorrow, and he kind of hedged it a bit of a confusing answer. Let's have a listen.
You're a dad who has to keep working. Are your kids at school?
So obviously we've been in school holidays. So in Victoria, some schools, the public schools, start today. Independent schools start back tomorrow. So I'll be having a discussion with my children as to what they should do. Obviously, they do have the option of being cared for safely at home. So I'll continue to have those discussions with them.
Why is that a discussion, though? If the government's saying that we need to send kids back to school, what's your hesitation?
I don't have a hesitation. I think it's safe for children to be at school, but obviously in Victoria they're saying if you can learn from home, that's their preference.
It just seems a bit odd that you're not committed to it, though. You're not committed to sending them back to school.
Well, I am committed to getting all children back to school, and I'm committed to getting all Australians that continuity of learning and continuity of education that they need.
Almost makes you cringe a bit there when he can't unequivocally say his own children are going and he's saying kids should go. No wonder people are confused. Kieran, now Scott Morrison, now he's moved to Canberra to deal with this crisis and recently moved his family down as well. I asked his office this morning if his children would be attending at the start of term. He told Perth radio station 6PR a short time ago he's taken his kids out of school the last week of last term because other students were not there and they were not being taught. He also said, interestingly, he did not believe that as long as the COVID crisis was going, it would ever be mandatory that children should go. So what we're looking, no matter what happens here, we seem to have this situation of some students at school and some online learning, no matter what the resolution is. And that's, of course, because the teachers still want social distancing. Scott Morrison made this important point. He pointed out that in South Australia, 50% of children are in school, whereas in New South Wales, 5% at the end of term were in school. So it would be helpful if that was lined up a bit better. We know the Northern Territory are going back altogether, but they only have 28 COVID-19 cases. Anyway, let's have a listen to what Scott Morrison said a short time ago.
It's also about what happens at school. Now, I kept my kids in school up until the last week because they weren't getting taught at school in that last week. I mean, they were sitting in a room looking at a screen. That's not teaching. That's childminding. And schools aren't for childminding. Schools are for teaching, and they're for learning. Now, ultimately, I can't see a time during this COVID crisis where, there would be any mandatory position put on parents who really did not want their children to go to school. I understand that, and I respect that.